I was having a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and we were looking at, this was pre-COVID, so we were wrong. We were looking at, the future, and said, what do we think of the big crises that are going to happen? And he talked about, possible war with China and kind of what we saw down the line for society. And I said, I don't think it's any of that. I think that the world is so interconnected that it won't be some kind of, us against them type of thing. I said, I think it'll be actually a global mental health crisis. And if you look at the rates of anxiety, depression, and suicide, particularly in the U.S., but globally, they're kind of going up and up and up. And I actually don't have to look at the rates. I can watch my own mental health and well-being as time passes and goes, am I okay? And the amount of effort and work and consciousness that it takes for me to feel whole and good every day. And I have a lot of support and a lot of privilege and a lot of different things in my life going for me. And so there's this kind of huge question: why are people suffering so much with issues around mental health, with issues around substance abuse, and at its extreme, suicide? What's going on? Very simple question. Answers that you tend to hear have to do with technology, and I think that is a huge component of it, and let's try to put that as clearly as possible. We're probably taking somewhere between 20 to 35% of our conscious energy absorbed on our phones, on our computers, on our televisions. That's a lot of energy and attention on moving pictures, on content, information, all different kinds of colorful information. We also know manipulated information to keep you on there. So there's the whole addiction aspect of technology. There's also the unknowns of what that does to the nervous system, but I think we're starting to find out. We become addicted to instant gratification. We become addicted to looking at something we don't know how to just be. We always need to be doing something, where when that wasn't an option, that wasn't the case, period. So we create that as an option and we fill in that gap, but just think about spending, and I'm probably being conservative when I say 20 to 35%. What kind of energy and attention are we putting on our phones, on our computers, et cetera? And what is that doing over the long term to our nervous system? We have no idea. Phones have only existed for, smartphones for like 15 years, maybe a little less, right? So we actually have no idea what that means, but we're getting a taste of it. So that's one huge component that everybody focuses on. I come from kind of a philosophical background, a historical background, so there's another one for me that actually is larger. It's like, to me, technology is nested in this larger context of the age that we live in. And so I could tell a story about, there was a period of time in the West when everybody had religious consciousness. People, when they were thinking about are they a good or bad person, first of all, people were thinking about whether they're a good or bad person. I don't even know if people think about that anymore. Now we're thinking, do I feel good or not, or whatever we think. People used to think about, am I a good or am I a bad person, in relationship to God, in relationship, if you're Christian, to heaven and hell, right? In relationship to this idea of being saintly or godlike or Jesus-like, right? So for, 800 years, something like that, that's the way people walked around constructing their existence. It's kind of foreign to us now, but that was quite recently. It was up until, I think, started to transition in the 1600s, and then continued to transition. Then you had the Enlightenment come along in the 1600s with modern science and the beginning of nation states, the idea of the self. Out of that Enlightenment came an idea of psychology. We started to think about kind of what's happening, who am I, what's going on in here. It wasn't so sort of cosmically God, religious focused. It was more about kind of who am I. Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. And he opened up this Pandora's box about who are we and where we're from, and maybe there's not God. And we entered into the secular age. Right? But you think about that, there was a pretty solid religious tradition that we came from. Prior to that, it was more religious tradition that we wouldn't call a religious tradition, and tribal existence and agricultural existence. That was pretty predictable. Each generation, the same as the one before it, generally, not a lot of quote unquote progress. Then suddenly you have rapid progress, you have the throwing off of religion, and then eventually you have the Enlightenment, which says through rationale and reason, if we all can be reasonable, we all can figure out how to create a utopian world. That was kind of Kant's idea and a few other people, right? It's not about God. It's about reason, universal reason. What is the truth? If we all know what the truth is, scientifically speaking, philosophically speaking, we all agree on it, then we can all agree and we can build a utopian society that we all agree upon. Everybody in the world. Huge backlash, postmodernism comes. What about black people? What about women? What about this? What about that? The biggest deal was World War I and World War II. Wait a minute, I thought we're all reasonable. Suddenly we just killed 100 million people in the most reasonable society we ever had. And it started in the most reasonable culture, the German culture, which was the most advanced culture, quote unquote, advanced culture of the time. But yet that culture, at least in World War II, decided they were going to try to kill, 20 million people. And so it just destroyed this dream of building the foundations of society on reason. So I'm telling this story, but it's really to understand that throughout all of human history, there have been what I would just call cultural containers. I understand who I'm supposed to be based on what my parents pass on to me from the culture, from their parents and from the environment. And that culture has been rapidly changing. And no period has been faster than the last 100 years. And so the most basic things that were the fundaments of our society, like I'm a man, you're a woman, we now question, well, is gender even real? What does it mean to be sane? What does it mean to be insane? What does it mean to be good? Who can be president? What are the job qualifications there? I mean, the most basic notions have kind of fallen by the wayside or have been questioned and kind of deconstructed and torn apart. And so we now if you're born into the world, you really have no idea exactly how you're supposed to be. You're very distant from ideas of morality and religion. You're very distant from when psychology was a living, breathing, brand new, way of being in the world. Now it's more of a marketing, everyday thing that everybody's doing. And so where is the moral authority? Where's the ground of being? Where's the moral of authority that exists in society right now? And so in my mind, technology is actually nested in the fact that everything's changed. And it's so much change so fast that there's no stability. And so everybody, of course, is going to be on their phones because we want to distract ourselves from the fact that we got no idea what the F we're doing. We had an idea when we knew that we were going to go to heaven. We had an idea when we knew we were trying to build a utopian society, be good American citizens, and do for our country. All that got wiped away. What are we doing now? We're posting YouTube videos and trying to make a buck, and hopefully I can find somebody I care about, and we don't destroy the whole planet with global warming. So I think there's a larger story there about mental health. I tend to be an optimist against my better judgment, which is to say I do view this time period as a transition. I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better, but I think it is a transition into something else. I couldn't possibly say what that something else is, but we're living in a very rapid time of transition.